Good afternoon. We're ready to begin, and we'll begin with a Hail Mary since it's the month of May. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death, amen. Saint Joan of Arc, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Nicole Angeli. She's sitting down here on the floor, on the chair right in front of the stage. She's a native of Hershey. She grew up here, born and raised on Sand Hill Road, believe it or not, before St. Joan of Arc School was built. And so she now lives in the Virgin Islands, which is very far from here, and she works with fish and wildlife. And so she's here to share with us a book that she wrote about lizards. So I'm sure all of you like lizards, right? Okay, so let's give her a nice warm welcome. I forgot to say we have 3 young men here today in school who are very excited to see their aunt, Daniel, Joseph, and Michael George, right? Let's give them a nice round of applause, too.
Thank you so much, Sister Eileen, and thank you, everyone at St. Joan of Arc. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Dr. Nicole Angeli. Some of you may know my nephews, Michael, Joseph, and Daniel, who attend school here, and I went to St. Joan of Arc my entire life. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from Hershey. I can walk to my house from this school, although at the time, the school was in downtown Hershey next to the church. After I graduated from Hershey High School, I went to Johns Hopkins University, where I studied behavioral biology, which looked at not only the biology of things like cells, genes, and other types of really small organismal biology, but also animals, humans, how people interact with one another. And I found that so interesting, but I thought, well, what about how humans are interacting with the environment? And how are animals interacting with the environment? And I went to the University of Maryland to do a master's degree in conservation biology. That's the study of how to preserve and conserve and help animals live for a long time in their environments. Conservation biology is a highly theoretical science. There is a lot of math that's needed in the underlying things that you're doing. So when you're looking at your math today, you're thinking, how is algebra going to help me? In 20 years, it's going to come back to you if you're going into. And I went to the Virgin Islands because I was familiar with the area and because I had lots of good contacts throughout my education to work there as their director of their Fish and Wildlife State Agency. So every day I get to work with lots of colleagues and lots of people. There's a lot of teamwork involved in conservation. And not only do I get to work with people that study things like me, like reptiles, but I also work with fisheries biologists, people who just today were going out to snare lobsters, who were going out to fish on boats for big pelagics like mahi and wahoo. But I also get to work with folks who are working on endangered species like tree boas, which are tiny boas that eat tiny lizards, and plants that are very endangered. Just like in Pennsylvania, we have lots of plants that are highly endangered in some of our regions. So I'm going to ask someone who's sitting in the front area, who knows what a herpetologist is? Herpetologists study blank and blank. Does anyone sitting on the ground know? I see a hand there. Okay, so we said plants and trees. So if I studied plants and trees, I would be a botanist. But I added a hint to this slide. I have on the slide, starting on the top left, I'm holding a snake in the country of Panama. In the middle, I'm holding a frog. in the country of Hong Kong. On the left, my friend Jen's holding a salamander in Virginia. Does that help? Hang on, I'm going to call all the way to the right. Yeah. Exactly. We study animals, and we specifically study two types of animals, reptiles and amphibians. And one of the reasons that reptiles and amphibians are studied together, because they're not related in the tree of life, but they are related in how they interact with their environment. They get hot when it's hot out, they get cool when it's cool out, they're dry when it's dry out, and they're wet when it's raining. And in Pennsylvania, we don't have as many lizards as we would in other areas, because lizards are primarily found in the tropics, like the chameleon that's on the bottom right of this screen. Can anyone guess how many lizards there are in Pennsylvania? I'm going to take, yes. The guess was 1,000. There are nearly 5,000 lizards in the world, but in Pennsylvania, there are only 6 species. There's one species of invasive gecko, a Mediterranean house gecko. There's one native species of fence lizards, which you may have seen on trees, on fences. There's one invasive species of wall lizard from Italy, and there are 3 native species of skinks. And these are all lizards that can withstand really cold temperatures, because even today it's colder than it was last week. These lizards are fine, but there's not that many because we're at a really high latitude and it gets really cold in the winter. That's why I moved to St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. It's 1,700 miles south of Pennsylvania. It's a small island that was formed during the Jurassic, and it is in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. There's nothing else around it. We're on an island that's 26 miles by 7 miles long. It's super tiny, but we have a lot of lizards. We have 4 geckos, an invasive iguana, an anole, 2 ground lizards, and 2 skinks. Some of those native lizards include Anolis acutus, which is our anole. You can see a similar species in Florida, which is called the brown anole. This anole is brown, but it's only found on St. Croix. We have non-native lizards, like green iguanas. They came over multiple times to St. Croix, first when the Carib Indians brought them from Venezuela, and later when people from the Dominican Republic and Central America brought them in as pets to St. Croix, and now they're everywhere. But what I studied was different. I was interested in those endangered animals. I studied the St. Croix ground lizard, which is a highly endangered lizard. I'm going to show you why this is a highly endangered lizard. It is left on 2 small islands. So it might be hard to see in this picture, but those 2 islands are Green Key and Buck Island. So I'm standing on the island of St. Croix, and the only places those lizards are found are where those pink arrows are, 2 small islands. I thought that was incredibly interesting. Why are they not on St. Croix? Why are they only on Green Key and Buck Island? The lizards are pretty cute, I think. The males only get to be about 60 millimeters long, so that's pretty tiny. The females are sometimes a little fatter, but they're also 60 millimeters long. The juveniles are real cute. They have bright blue tails. And to get to those 2 small islands, we have to do a couple of things. The first thing we have to do is take a boat. Then we have to go hiking. We have to use a GPS to figure out where we're going. I never thought when I was little that playing in my backyard on Sand Hill Road, I'd be able to use those same skills of going through, avoiding poison ivy, trying to find blackberries. I would do that as an adult, but looking for lizards as an actual job. I feel I'm incredibly lucky to do that. And some of the things that we're able to do with that data that we collect from the lizards are create genetic trees so that we can see how long those lizards have been on those islands by themselves. And doing that, we're able to move the lizards to maintain their genetic diversity. And I'm going to use some big words during this presentation, but that's because I want to give context to everyone. And I know we have folks from kindergarten to 8th grade in the room, so I'm trying to be inclusive of everyone. And afterwards, I'm happy to talk about big words. I'm also happy to talk on a higher level if you have questions. What we found is that we've done a really good job conserving those ground lizards. So every little dot on the top, each row indicates 10 lizards. In 2008, so how many people in here were born in 2008? Oh boy, just a few. So before you were born, there were fewer than 400 lizards in the entire world. 400. There are 500 students in this school. If each of you was a lizard, there would be more of you than there were those lizards. But in 2013, those lizards have increased in numbers to over 10,000. So that's 20 schools. They've gone from one school to 20 schools in that amount of time. And that's because we've done things like make sure that they can all interbreed, moving them to new locations like new islands. And also because we've been able to restore their habitat, adding native plants rather than having invasive plants all over these islands, making it very cold because there's lots of canopy cover. So if you remember the slide where I talked about genetics, you saw the lizards. I'm going to do a quick demonstration. Those lizards we collect, we have to get genetic material off of them. They're very fast and they are very hard to catch. The way that we catch lizards is what my friend Andy's demonstrating here with a fishing line. He has a little lizard all the way at the end of that. We lasso lizards. And so I'm going to quickly demonstrate how to lasso lizards with my two little beanie baby friends over here, Rainbow the chameleon and Aurora the dragon. And I'm going to quickly show you how we lasso lizards. We take genetic data from them, we weigh them and measure them. So just like when you go to the doctor and you have to get weighed and measured and they say, oh, you're at a perfect weight and height, because you all are. That's exactly what we do with the lizards, so that we can see if they're getting enough food, we can see if they need some assistance, if we need to revegetate or restock different types of prey animals. And that's really one of the most important jobs that we do. So I'm going to quickly, I won't have the microphone, so I'm going to walk over, but I'm going to show you. So what we do is take regular line, regular twine that you can get at home. Regular sewing thread works really well for small lizards. Like those fence lizards you might have around your house, you can do this. We make a line just like you were going to go fishing. So we make a loop, and we use a knot called a bowline. So if you go boating, you might know this knot. You make a couple of loops around, and you have a loop on the end that can open and that can close, and that is permanent. And we attach it to a long pole, and we lasso the lizards. So we're actively hunting the lizards out there. It's pretty fun, but it takes a long time. It's usually about 100 degrees out when we're getting these lizards, so we're sweating, we're thirsty, we're hungry, and it usually takes about an hour to get one lizard because they are so sneaky. So I'm going to quickly show you. We're not going to spend an hour because Aurora and Rainbow are not moving, but it's a really nice thing that you could do in your own backyard for lizards that you might be finding as well. So you always make this loop as big as the head of the animal, but no bigger. So I'm looking at that. Come in. Then I catch them, clip off their tail. So it's pretty simple to lasso lizards, and it's pretty fun to do. So I definitely recommend doing this. You can do it with things just around your own house. What we're going to do now, and I know that this is going to be at different levels for different people, so if you have questions afterwards, please ask. I'm actually going to read The Lizard Lady. So when I worked at the Smithsonian, if you've been to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., you see they have lots of exhibits, lots of outreach. What you don't see is that behind the scenes, there are genetics labs. There are labs where we have specimens of animals in big jars so we can study them. And all of those scientists work together to ensure that the different types of exhibits we have in the museum are accurate. And because of that, we get lots of requests to work on different types of outreach materials. And I was really lucky because I was asked by an excellent publishing company to work with them to create this story of the lizard lady. So The Lizard Lady was co-created by a children's author, Jennifer Keats Curtis, and myself. It was illustrated by Veronica Jones, who does cartoons. And I'm gonna display the ebook up here, but we have some copies down here, and we're gonna donate a copy to the library as well, so you can see it later. So we have a lot of information in the beginning, including the fact that these lizards are endangered, so we actually have permits to touch them. Things like wall lizards, fence lizards, you don't need to do that, but if it's endangered, like a hellbender or salamander, you might need one. Shh. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Do you hear that? Shree, shree, shree. Quietly, Nicole creeps towards a shriveled pile of dried brown leaves. She spots a skinny little insect, a green walking stick, blending in with a green plant. He is not making any noise. She tilts her head, listening carefully. She hears the shrill shree, shree, shree of a pearly-eyed thrasher, an insect-hunting bird. Nicole sweeps thorns from her pants. She wipes the sweat from her face. It is time to get out of the blinding sun. With a sigh, she sits in the shade of a cactus and sips her water. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Suddenly, Nicole hears a sound. She tiptoes closer to another heap of leaves and spies large land crabs. Smiling, she uses a stick to startle the red-bodied creatures. They duck sideways into their underground homes. Nicole is not looking for insects or crabs. She is searching for a critically endangered animal, the St. Croix ground lizard. Nicole is a scientist who studies these lizards. The people on the islands call her the Lizard Lady. The Lizard Lady searches for St. Croix ground lizards on 4 small islands around St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Why aren't they on St. Croix? In the 1880s, farmers on St. Croix brought mongooses to the island. The farmers thought mongooses would eat the rats that were eating their sugarcane crops. The mongooses didn't eat all the rats. The rats climbed trees to get away. Mongooses can't climb well, so instead they ate sea turtle eggs and birds and almost every St. Croix ground lizard on St. Croix. The ground lizards will never be able to live on St. Croix again unless mongooses are removed. Fortunately, the lizards have survived on 2 little islands, Protestant Key and Green Key. To save these little reptiles from extinction, scientists planned to bring St. Croix ground lizards from the 2 keys to 2 new homes on nearby Ruth Island and Buck Island. Did their idea work? Today, the Lizard Lady has come to Buck Island to find out. Since the lizards use the sun to warm up, Nicole searches for them during the hottest, brightest part of the day. At night when it rains or when it is cloudy, the lizards stay warm and dry by hiding in underground burrows. Off Nicole hikes in her heavy boots. She carries a notebook and pencils, a machete to cut vines, a GPS unit, flagging tape in case her GPS unit doesn't work, a cell phone, a whistle in case her phone doesn't work, a small empty cooler to safely store the lizards, and a gallon of water. The Lizard Lady hikes over ridge tops, into the dense Caribbean forest, and across sandy beaches. She uses the machete to whack her way through thick plants, heavy brush, and sometimes giant spider webs. The lizards are hard to see, but Nicole is an expert tracker. Sometimes she hears the lizards before she can even see them. Shh. Do you hear that? Scratch, scratch, scratch. A lizard is hungrily prowling, looking for small prey. Cockroaches, crickets, moths, termites, ants, and small hermit crabs in the leaves. There, Nicole sees 2 tiny eyes of an alert lizard watching her. Using a long pole with a knotted loop on the end, Nicole slowly slips the rope over its head. As it tightens, the reptile rolls to get away. Quickly, before it escapes, Nicole snatches its belly and its legs. This one is feisty. St. Croix ground lizards have sharp, serrated teeth, but they're small, so Nicole doesn't mind a curious nibble of her fingers. Nicole carefully drops the lizard into her cooler before recording the GPS coordinates and tying flagging tape on a branch. She packs up her gear and heads to a shack near the beach. There she keeps a ruler, a scale, and her notebook. She measures and weighs the lizard. When she is finished, Nicole puts the lizard into the cooler and hikes back to the spot where she caught it. She sees the flagging tape, so she knows exactly where to release it. She opens the cooler and it races away. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Nicole listens. The lizard is already meandering through the leaf litter towards its underground home, eating termites all the way. The idea to move the lizards is working, but the work is not done. The lizard lady is among a group of scientists who monitor the lizards each year. These lizards live on small islands without mongooses. One day, if the mongooses are removed from St. Croix, the lizards could return to their native land. But not today. Today, it is time for the lizard lady to go home. Nicole turns on the boat's engine and unties it from the dock. As she leaves the island behind, a flock of brown pelicans soars overhead. She spots a sea turtle surfacing to take a breath. Over the bow, flying fish glint like silver flashes. It is just another day in the life of the lizard lady. So thank you guys so much for listening. At the end of all of the books, there's a section that's called For Creative Minds. So if you have some questions or wanted to do some games, at the end of the book, there's 4 pages. And one of those pages is about becoming a herpetologist. Who now wants to become a herpetologist? Yeah. It's pretty fun. You can drive boats around. You get to catch lizards and snakes. You get to travel all over the world. So I like all of these hands. I hope all of you pursue this path. And if you do want to, there's a Society for the Study of Amphibians and Reptiles that has a lot of information about what you might need to learn on your journey to becoming a herpetologist. And one thing I like to always say is, I think that everyone is a herpetologist. If you have an interest in amphibians and reptiles, you're a herpetologist. If you have an interest in birds, you're an ornithologist. If you have an interest in flowers and plants and trees, you're a botanist. Because we need every single person to be caring about these animals. And there are lots of ways that you can help scientists as well. So you don't just need to keep a notebook, which is one of those pages in For Creative Minds. It shows you the data that you would want to collect over time to understand how animals live. We also have a program called iNaturalist, which is an app on a phone. You can take a picture of something, a bird, an insect, a centipede, whatever it is that you're interested in knowing the species of, and it will record its location, it will tell you what species it is, and it uploads it into a database where scientists like myself or some of my colleagues will go, they'll verify that record, and it goes into an online database that has over 1 billion observations. And all those observations are used for all types of projects that we do at work. I know that the Pennsylvania Game Commission uses this app. I know that the Fish and Boat Commission uses this app as well. It's very useful to do this type of work, and it's easier now than ever with the internet that we're able to share those observations. So I'm just going to end by reading one of the For Creative Minds sections at the back of the book, and that's about why I wanted to be a herpetologist, and then we'll close. So as a girl, I wanted to be an explorer. I loved discovering everything in the great outdoors. I never wanted to be inside. I'd forage for insects, animals, and berries, and look for sticks to whittle. I always knew that I'd become a scientist, but what kind? In school, I learned I didn't want to be in a lab. I wanted to be outside. Being a herpetologist, a scientist who studies reptiles and amphibians, allows me to spend most of my time outdoors. My passion is conserving animals, and I love learning why some species survive while others go extinct, and figuring out ways to save threatened species like the St. Croix ground lizard. Even on weekends, I am a herpetologist, and anyone can be a herpetologist. All you need is an interest in reptiles and amphibians and a notebook. Open your notebook and create columns for the date, weather, place, species, your photo ID, and notes. Keep the left-hand page open for your notes, your observations and feelings. On each page, write the date and location across the top, and then write about the amphibians and reptiles that you see. That's it. That's all there is. Thank you. And so I think we have a few minutes for questions. So if anyone has questions, I think the thing is it's difficult to hear, so you're going to have to really yell, but I'm going to try and get to as many questions as we can, okay? Okay. Okay, I think you were asking about the stuffed animal iguana. Those are just stuffed animals. One is a chameleon, and those live in Africa. And the other was a dinosaur, so is no longer living. Thank you. How many species of lizards do I catch, or have I caught? I've caught over, I think, about 65 species of lizards, and I've caught them everywhere from Australia to India to Panama and Peru and Ecuador, and all over the United States, especially in the Southwest. There's many types of deserts that have their own set of species across the American Southwest. And that's a great place if you're ever going on vacation or heading out to the Southwest. Lots of lizards to see. Okay, I'm gonna move over here. Have I ever seen a snake? I have seen lots of snakes and caught lots of snakes. And if you're in this area, some of the snakes that you might see include ring-neck snakes. So they have a white ring around their neck, and they're really slender and black. You might see water moccasins, cottonmouths. Those are snakes you don't want to touch. You might see timber rattlesnakes if you're in northern Pennsylvania. You might see other types of racers. And all of those snakes do things like eat rats, mice, things we don't want in our houses. And so snakes are a really important part of our ecosystem, and Pennsylvania is blessed with many species of snakes. She asks, how many places have I been? I've been to every continent, so 6 continents except for Antarctica. There's no lizards or snakes there. And I've been to over, I think, maybe 24 countries. My favorite lizard? Okay. Yeah, I can walk around. That's great. We're going to walk around. This is way better. Thank you. Hang on, I'm going to have you talking to the microphone. Have I seen a brown lizard? A lot of lizards are brown. Actually, it's interesting. Some lizards, just like all of us, have lots of different colors. So there's a really common lizard, the brown anole, that's found all over the south of the United States. It has over 30 color morphs. That means basically it has 30 different colors of hair. One species. So just like all of us in this room, we have different colors of eyes, different colors of hair. Same thing with lizards, lots of different colors.
How many species of reptiles have you seen?
I have seen, and I actually keep these in that app I talked about, iNaturalist. So in iNaturalist, I think I only have about 30 species of lizards, but I think I've seen more than 80. in the wild. Do you have a hand up? Do you have a question?
What do snakes do?
What do snakes do? Snakes like to slither around the ground. They like to go in burrows. They like to hide in rocks, and they definitely like to they definitely like to eat lots of rodents. Great question.
What's your favorite lizard?
Oh, my favorite lizard is a chameleon. The first time I saw chameleons was the first time I was out of the country in Tanzania. And reptiles like chameleons have opposing toes, so their hands are permanently like this. And when they climb and when they walk on branches, they grab the branch, and then they peel their fingers off to keep walking. And I think it's so cute.
Have you seen,
Have I seen dotted snakes? I have seen some dotted snakes. You know what, one of my favorite snakes is called an Anelius, and that is in Panama and Central America. It's orange and black spotted. It looks like Halloween every day. I'm gonna come up here towards the steps. Yes.
How much snakes have you caught?
Ooh, I've not caught as many snakes as lizards, but I've probably caught a few hundred snakes, but maybe only 20 or 25 species. I'm gonna go 1, 2, and you.
Have you ever got bitten from a lizard or a snake?
Have I ever gotten bitten by a lizard or a snake? So many times. And actually, one of those ground lizards bit my thumb so hard it took off half my thumbnail. But, usually they're just acting in self-defense. But that is why it's super important to only handle animals when you're with an adult or someone who's trained so that you don't get bit as well, unless you don't mind because you know it's not venomous, or you don't really care because you love the animal so much. I'm gonna take, yeah.
Have you ever caught any other animal besides a snake or a lizard?
Have I caught other animals besides snakes and lizards? Yes, I have. I've trapped lots of mongoose. I've caught lots of fish, lots of bonefish specifically. I've caught lobsters. I've caught crayfish, lots of aquatic insects. And one of my favorite things is using a net and catching butterflies. Yes. Have I had an encounter with a poisonous lizard or snake? Yes. I've seen lots of them in the wild. And I think one of the important things that I've always found about poisonous snakes and lizards is to remember they're not poisonous in the sense that if you touch them, something's going to happen to you. It's if they bite you and they're venomous, they're going to inject that into you. So the important thing to do when you see something that is venomous is to stop where you are and to make yourself not threatening. As long as you respect those animals, take a step back, be calm. That's the most important thing. A really scary time, I stepped over a very venomous snake in Panama. I'm very thankful that nothing happened. And I think that is an important thing to remember. I'm going to take 2 more questions up here, and then I'm going to go up the next aisle. Ooh, the best type of lizard to keep as a pet. That's an interesting question because I think that pets, especially for lizards, things like a leopard tail lizard are good pets, but it's really important you give them a really good diet and you remember they might live 20 or 30 years. They're gonna live a really long time. And so actually myself, I have dogs. I have 3 dogs. I love dogs, and I think dogs and cats are the best pets you can have. Yes.
How many snakes have you caught?
How many snakes have I caught? I was talking about that a little earlier because I think it's interesting because catching snakes and seeing snakes to me feels the same. I love to see them. So I think I've caught about 25 snakes, but I've seen probably more than 80. One more. Yes. Ooh, have I ever gone in the water to catch snakes? So I've seen snakes in the water scuba diving in Sri Lanka. I saw sea snakes, or sea serpents. Those are some of the most venomous snakes in the world, but their teeth are so small, they can't actually bite you. I've also seen water moccasins while I was snorkeling in springs in Florida, and they were catching fish. It was really cute.
Where is your favorite place to go looking for lizards and snakes?
My favorite place to go looking for lizards and snakes is anywhere that's close to the beach, because the lizards that live between the sands of the beach and the desert or the forests usually have really unique adaptations, things like weird toes or weird tails or different colors. They might change colors quickly. And I think those differences among lizards and among people are really interesting. Yes?
If you couldn't be a herpetologist, what would you do?
If I could be something else? If I had to choose something else and not be a herpetologist, what would I do? That's a great question. I think what I would like to do is be a cartographer. I would like to make maps. And I actually get to do that as a herpetologist. I get to make maps of where animals live. I get to annotate maps. I get to print maps. I get to put maps online. And I also get to verify those maps. They have an iNaturalist as one of the experts there. I love maps and mapping. How did I switch from an explorer to a herpetologist? So maybe some of you all have aspirations for what you want to do when you grow up, but you realize maybe they're not going to make money. Maybe they're not going to give you a living. So I had to think about, what could I do to travel that I could still contribute to knowledge for the world and also make a living? What types of things were state agencies or hospitals or the federal government looking for? And I think you don't need to worry about that now. I would suggest everyone follow their passions for now, and you'll find out how to make it work as you get older. When I get sick, what do I do? When the lizards get sick, what do we do? That's a great question too, because one of the things I am not is a veterinarian. And what I like to do when animals get sick is call a friend who is a veterinarian. Because animals can't talk to us, just like your dogs and cats can't talk to you. You bring them to the vet. And they have a lot of diagnostic tests that they have to perform that we're not all trained to do. They spend years in school learning how to be vets. And that's why I think teamwork is so important as well for all the sciences. I can't do everything. Vets can't do everything. But together, we can do it all. Why do I enjoy looking at lizards? I think they're so cute. That's it. That's really the sum of it. I also think they're a good organism to look at big questions in science. Why are some species in Pennsylvania and other species in New York? Why are some species in the Caribbean and other species in South America? Why? That's one of those main questions in science that we still don't have all the answers to. I'll come here, and then I'm going to go up there. Yes. The first place I caught a lizard was probably not on Sand Hill Road. It was probably in Australia. I'm almost sure it was. So I think I was in Australia on a study abroad. We were trying to figure out why some species of frogs call at certain times of the night and not other species. So we had different kinds of recorders out. We were playing these frog calls, and then you'd wait to hear if anyone called back. And when we were doing that, we saw some amazing lizards in Australia. And so that was the first place. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Have I ever caught a rattlesnake? I have, but it's actually really specialized. There's a lot of skills involved in catching snakes that are venomous nowadays. And one of the reasons that is if you go to a conference of herpetologists, Everyone over about 60 might have 4 fingers. They might have 3 fingers. It was not safe handling rattlesnakes the same way that you would handle lizards or other animals. What you do is you actually grab them with tongs and you use a long, slender plastic tube to put them in head first so that then you can handle the snake, get all the information you might need out of it. But that's a good question. I'm going to go up here. Yes, sir. Can I watch the movie that I showed us? The book, yeah. So that book is actually online, and we have some physical copies of it, so it's going to be in the library. And if you go online, you can actually preview it in the same way that I showed it for about half of the book. And so we'll make sure that you guys all have the website. You can also download coloring pages, word puzzles, and teaching lessons that conform to Pennsylvania state standards. Yes, ma'am. How many colors could be on one lizard? So there are beautiful lizards in South America called Nematophorus. The nemis, they call them. And nemis have sometimes over 15 colors on one animal. They can be orange, red, their heads might be green, oftentimes their tails are blue, their toes might be a different color than their legs and arms. It's pretty amazing. Yes, ma'am. Have I ever read The Lizard Lady? Yeah, definitely. We just read it, and I was so lucky because I got to help create it. And I think creating is one of the things I also like about science. Like, a lot of questions in science we literally don't have answers for, and you kind of are making them up. You're looking at data, and you're creating a narrative. I like that creative aspect of it. It's one of my favorite things about science. And I think we're just about getting time to close. Yes. Yeah, okay. So maybe I'm going to take like 3 more questions, and then we're going to close up. Yes, sir.
My friend has a question.
Do snakes have black tongues?
So it's interesting you ask if snakes have black tongues. Does anyone have a dog that has a black tongue? Yeah, I see a couple people with hands up. Lots of animals have black tongues. Giraffes have black tongues. Some snakes have black tongues. Some snakes have blue tongues. Some have pink tongues. So it depends on the species you get, what color their tongue is. Thank you for that question. Yes, ma'am. What do snakes eat? They eat all kinds of things. So there's actually a whole group of snakes in Central America that eats slugs, and they eat snails, and we call them goo eaters because they eat gooey things. And then there are other snakes and lizards that eat insects. There are some snakes and lizards that eat birds, the whole thing. Some snakes eat large animals. So there's a whole range of things that go from insects and snakes all the way up to large animals. They're all carnivores, and that's why they're eating insects, small rodents, large mammals, birds. Yes, sir. Yeah. So this young man has a lot of snakes in his backyard, and his dad catches them and relocates them to other locations. And that's definitely something you can do. And I know if your family's not comfortable doing it, there are definitely services. The state of Pennsylvania has a list of folks who are certified in relocating animals. And there are snake and reptile rescues as well. Snakes are great in the environment, but of course we don't want them in our house. And last question. Yes.
Have you ever seen a Komodo dragon or an adder snake?
Have I ever seen an adder snake? Yes. I saw an adder in India. I've seen a lot of adders in India. And I've never seen a Komodo dragon except for in a zoo. But I know that there are a lot of really great like Planet Earth and some of these great documentaries that show. And sometimes the best place to see animals is actually in a documentary, because if you're out in the wild, animals are usually sleeping or hiding. So you're going to spend a lot of time seeing nothing and then one amazing thing. But when they have it in a documentary that you see online, they're going to show you all of the action. And I really like documentaries for that reason. Okay, last 2 questions.
What is your favorite thing about your favorite lizard? Is there any green lizards that are your favorite?
Yeah, so I had 2 questions about my favorite lizards. One was, do I have any favorite green lizards? I actually really love baby iguanas. They're so cute. They move their heads back and forth. They have these eyes that are constantly looking to make sure they're not in danger. So they'll be on a branch and their heads are going, murr, murr, and they're tiny and cute. I really like them. But I would say I think the St. Croix ground lizard, because I've spent so much time with it, is my favorite lizard. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Even though she's from Hershey, we want to give her something to bring back from Hershey and from St. Joan of Arc. And we really, really enjoyed, learned a lot about lizards and all kinds of animals. So let's give her one nice big round of applause. Thank you.